Agonized human screams echoed through the Klingon torture chamber as the reptilian interrogator Mira flayed the skin off the 12-year-old girl's back, demanding the location of the secret human base, as the Galactic Empire would butcher every human in the galaxy if they didn't get it. The terrified girl, Emily Thompson, daughter of the late genius weapons scientist Sarah Thompson, was strapped to a steel table covered in human blood in the bowels of the massive Klingon flagship Galactic. The 8-foot scaled Klingon brute savagely peeled away Emily's flesh with a serrated knife, sending spurts of crimson blood across the dark chamber. "Where's the human base, you squealing primate filth?" Mira roared as he dug the blade under Emily's skin and ripped upwards, slicing a long bloody gash up her spine. "Tell me now, or I will flay you alive, layer by layer." Emily shrieked as tendons tore and vertebrae cracked. Hot, gushing blood soaked the table, but through sobs of pain she choked out, "Never." She knew the location of humanity's last hidden fortress, their final hope against the genocidal Klingon Empire. Her mother's dying words had been for Emily to guard that secret at all costs. Without that base, without those weapons, the Klingons would exterminate all humans. Emily would rather be skinned alive than betray her species. As Emily's tortured cries reverberated through the Galactic, a lone human stealth ship knifed through space towards the massive Klingon vessel. Captain Donald Griffin, Earth's greatest pilot and fiercest warrior, was humanity's last shot at rescuing Emily before the Klingons broke her and doomed humankind. Griffin expertly piloted his stealth ship into the Galactic's hangar bay, gliding past the Klingon security systems undetected. As he landed, 2 Klingon guards rushed towards his ship, but Griffin was ready. In a blur of motion, he leapt out, his monomolecular blade flashing. The guards crumpled to the floor, their throats slit before they could even raise their weapons. Griffin stripped the uniform off one of the guards and quickly donned it, disguising himself. He moved swiftly through the maze-like corridors of the massive ship, darting from shadow to shadow. At each computer terminal he passed, Griffin jacked in, his fingers flying over the keys as he hacked into the Klingon systems, desperately searching for any sign of Emily's location. In the torture chamber, Mira grew impatient with the girl's resistance. Snarling, he grabbed a neural probe and jammed it into Emily's temple. Agony exploded through her skull as the device sent searing pain signals directly into her brain. Emily convulsed on the table, her screams reaching a new pitch of anguish. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision as the unbearable pain pushed her to the brink of unconsciousness. Suddenly the cell door blasted open, and Griffin charged in, catching Mira off guard. The Klingon roared in rage, dropping the neural probe and reaching for his weapon, but Griffin was already on him. Human and Klingon clashed in a whirlwind of slashing blades and blaster shots, moving faster than the eye could follow. Mira had the advantage of raw alien strength and size, towering over the human. But Griffin's speed and skill outmatched the brute. The human ducked and wove, his monomolecular blade a silver blur as he slashed and parried. In a spray of green blood, Griffin's blade sliced clean through Mira's right arm, severing it at the elbow. The Klingon howled in pain, even as Griffin pressed his attack, his blade cutting a deep furrow across Mira's scaly chest. But the Klingon wasn't finished. With a thunderous bellow, Mira lashed out with his remaining fist, his spiked knuckles slamming into Griffin's chest. The blow lifted the human off his feet and sent him flying back, crashing into the bulkhead. Stars exploded across Griffin's vision as he crumpled to the deck, momentarily stunned. Seeing his chance, Mira lunged for Emily. The girl cried out weakly as the Klingon's claws sank into her arm, ripping her free of the restraints. Mira dragged her from the table, pulling her in front of him like a living shield as he backed towards the door. Griffin shook his head, fighting through the ringing in his ears and the pain in his ribs. He staggered to his feet, snatching up his fallen blade as he saw Mira disappearing out the cell door with Emily. With a wordless snarl of rage, Griffin charged after them, his feet pounding on the deck, his heart hammering in his ears. He wouldn't let that Klingon filth escape with Emily. He would save her and finish this mission, no matter the cost. The chase was on. Griffin raced through the Galactic's labyrinthine corridors in hot pursuit of Mira. His heart pounding, as he dodged blaster fire from the Klingon soldiers he encountered along the way. He ducked behind a bulkhead, his own blaster spitting deadly energy bolts that felled 2 scaly warriors. Then he was moving again, his feet pounding on the metal deck, every fiber of his being focused on reaching Emily before it was too late. He burst into the ship's central atrium, a cavernous multi-level space dominated by a transparent dome overhead that revealed the cold stars, and there, across the vast chamber, was Mira, one clawed hand gripping Emily's arm, the other inputting commands into a control panel. A shimmering force field sprang up, cutting off Griffin's advance. He skidded to a halt, his eyes locked on his adversary. Mira looked up, his reptilian face splitting into a cruel grin. "You're too late, human," he sneered. "I've initiated this ship's self-destruct sequence. In minutes, the Kratak will be nothing but atoms." "Release the girl," Griffin snarled, his blaster aimed squarely at Mira's head. The Klingon laughed, a harsh grating sound. "This ship is but one of many, each equipped with a new weapon that will burn your pathetic colonies from the stars. The Kratak is expendable, but know this before you die. The Klingon Empire will grind humanity into dust beneath our claws, and your species will be nothing but a memory." Griffin's mind raced, analyzing the force field, searching for weaknesses. There, a fluctuation in the energy pattern. His hands flew over his wrist computer, hacking the system, exploiting the vulnerability. The force field flickered and died, and Griffin charged forward, a wordless battle cry erupting from his throat. He closed the distance to Mira in seconds, and they clashed on a narrow bridge spanning the atrium's dizzying drop. Blaster shots flashed between them as they engaged in a deadly dance, trading blows and energy bolts. Mira was strong and fast, but Griffin was faster. He ducked under a swipe of the Klingon's claws and came up inside his guard, his blaster bucking in his hand. The shot took Mira in the chest, burning through his armor, and the Klingon staggered back, teetering on the edge of the bridge. For a moment it looked as if he might regain his balance, but then Griffin lunged forward and struck, a powerful kick that sent Mira plummeting from the bridge to the hard deck far below. Griffin didn't wait to see the Klingon hit bottom. He turned to Emily, scooping the injured girl into his arms. "I've got you," he said. "You're safe now." He carried her swiftly back the way he had come, retracing his steps towards his hidden ship. But as they approached the hangar bay, a heavily armed Klingon security team emerged from a side corridor, blocking their path. At their head was Commander Croth, Mira's loyal subordinate. The Klingon's eyes blazed with fury as he leveled his blaster rifle at Griffin. "Drop the girl, human, and surrender," he barked. "You have nowhere to run." Griffin darted to the side, putting a control console between himself and the Klingons. He set Emily down, shielding her with his body as blaster shots sizzled overhead, sparking off the console. Griffin returned fire, dropping one Klingon then another, but there were too many of them and they were well armed. Griffin checked the time. Minutes left before the ship self-destructed. They had to get out of here, but they were pinned down, the Klingons advancing steadily, their blaster fire intensifying. Griffin looked around desperately, his mind racing. There had to be a way out, some option he hadn't considered, because if he failed now, if he couldn't get Emily to safety, then humanity's last hope would die with them on this ship. The seconds ticked away as Griffin and Emily huddled behind the scant cover of the control console, the sounds of Klingon blaster fire and the ominous rumble of the wounded ship filling their ears. Time was running out. Griffin's eyes darted from the advancing Klingons to the airlock, a desperate plan forming in his mind. His fingers flew over his wrist computer, remotely commanding his stealth ship to slip out of the hangar and position itself just outside the airlock. With a few swift keystrokes, Griffin overloaded the control console. Sparks erupted from the panel, and a heartbeat later, a massive explosion rocked the corridor. Searing heat washed over them as the blast engulfed the approaching Klingons, their agonized screams drowned out by the roar of the flames. "Go, go, go!" Griffin yelled, scooping up Emily and sprinting for the airlock. Blaster bolts sizzled past them as Croth and the surviving Klingons opened fire, their shots going wide in the smoke and confusion. Griffin slammed his fist against the airlock controls, the door hissing open. He dove inside with Emily, sealing the hatch behind them, just as a blaster bolt scorched the metal where his head had been a second before. "Hang on," Griffin warned, his hand already on the emergency decompression lever. He yanked it down, and with a rush of escaping air, the outer door blasted open, flinging them out into the cold embrace of space. The sudden decompression sent them tumbling end over end, the Kratak receding behind them. Griffin activated his suit's built-in thrusters, stabilizing their spin and propelling them towards his waiting ship. Blaster fire from the Klingons lanced out into the void, energy bolts sizzling past them, uncomfortably close. Griffin jinked and weaved, making them a harder target, all the while shielding Emily with his own body. After several heart-stopping seconds, they reached the stealth ship. Griffin hauled Emily inside, slamming the airlock shut. He raced to the cockpit, his fingers already dancing over the controls as he threw himself into the pilot's seat. The ship's engines thrummed to life, and they accelerated away from the Kratak, the cloaking device engaging and rendering them invisible to the Klingon sensors. On the viewscreen, the Klingon flagship receded rapidly, and then, with a blinding flash, it disintegrated as its self-destruct sequence reached its inevitable conclusion. Griffin let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They'd made it. Emily was safe. But his relief was short-lived, as an urgent transmission from Admiral Hawkins crackled over the comm. "Captain Griffin, do you read me?" Hawkins' voice was tense, strained. "I read you, Admiral," Griffin replied, a sinking feeling in his gut. "The Klingons have launched an attack on the Arcadia colony. They're using some kind of new weapon, something we've never seen before. The colony's defenses are failing, and casualties are already in the thousands. We need you back on Earth immediately for an emergency briefing. We have to find a way to stop these bastards, and fast." Griffin's jaw tightened as he listened to the Admiral's words. He glanced over at Emily, taking in her battered, bruised form, the raw wounds on her back from Mira's torture. Anger surged through him, hot and fierce. He turned back to the comm. "Understood, Admiral. I'm on my way." He cut the transmission and laid in a course for Earth, the stars blurring into streaks of light as the ship leaped into warp. Griffin reached over and gently squeezed Emily's hand. "I promise you," he said softly, his voice steel, "I'm going to make the Klingons pay for what they've done. For your mother, for Arcadia, for everyone they've hurt. Humanity won't bow to their tyranny. We'll fight and we'll win no matter the cost. No." Emily met his gaze, her eyes filled with pain but also with a fierce, unbreakable determination. She nodded, squeezing his hand back. No words were needed. They both knew the stakes, the battle that lay ahead. As Earth grew larger on the viewscreen, Griffin felt a renewed sense of purpose settle over him. The Klingons had picked this fight, but he would be the one to finish it, for Emily, for humanity. Failure was not an option. Griffin's stealth ship blazed through Earth's atmosphere, the scorched hull still glowing from the heat of re-entry. As he guided the ship towards the heavily fortified Global Command Center, his heart sank at the sight that greeted him. The once pristine orbital defense platforms lay in ruins, reduced to shattered hulks drifting lifelessly in space. Klingon warships swarmed around the planet like angry hornets, raining down destruction on the beleaguered human defenses. Griffin set the ship down on the command center's landing pad, the impact shaking the already battle-scarred craft. He helped Emily out of the ship, supporting her as they made their way inside, past grim-faced soldiers rushing to their posts. The command center was a hive of activity, with officers shouting orders and technicians hunched over glowing displays, desperately trying to coordinate the tattered remnants of Earth's defenses. Admiral Hawkins strode up to Griffin, his face etched with the weight of the desperate situation. "Captain Griffin, I'm glad you made it," he said, his voice strained. "The Klingons have launched a full-scale invasion. They're targeting our colonies and outposts across the galaxy. Our fleet is outnumbered and outgunned. We're barely holding them back." Griffin clenched his fists, the memory of Mira's cruel laughter echoing in his mind. "How can we stop them, Admiral?" Hawkins led Griffin and Emily into a secure briefing room, sealing the door behind them. He activated a holographic display, revealing a schematic of a massive, spherical device. "This is our only hope," he said grimly. "A prototype weapon developed from Dr. Thompson's research. A planet cracker bomb capable of splitting a world in half." Griffin stared at the hologram, a chill running down his spine. "You want to use this against the Klingons?" Hawkins nodded, his expression grim. "We have no choice. We must strike at the heart of their empire, at their homeworld. It's the only way to end this war." Emily stepped forward, her eyes wide. "But the Klingon homeworld, there are millions of civilians there." Hawkins met her gaze, his own eyes haunted. "I know. But if we don't act, the Klingons will slaughter billions of our people. We have to make the hard choice, to sacrifice millions to save billions." Griffin felt a wave of nausea at the thought of the devastation they were about to unleash, but the memory of the Arcadia colony burning, of the countless lives lost to Klingon aggression, steeled his resolve. "I'll do it," he said, his voice hard. "I'll lead the mission to deliver the bomb." Hawkins nodded, his shoulders sagging with the weight of the decision. "Assemble a team, Captain. Choose the best, because this will be a one-way trip. You'll have to fight your way to the planet's core to plant the device." As Griffin left the briefing room, his mind reeled with the enormity of the task ahead. He was about to embark on a suicide mission, one that would likely claim his life and the lives of his team. But if it meant saving humanity, if it meant avenging the fallen and protecting the innocent, he would gladly make that sacrifice. He gathered his team, a hand-picked group of the toughest, most skilled soldiers humanity had to offer. They armed themselves with the best weapons and gear available, knowing they would be facing the full might of the Klingon military. As they boarded their ship, a heavily armored assault craft bristling with weaponry, Griffin looked each of them in the eye, seeing the same determination and resolve he felt burning within himself. The journey to the Klingon homeworld was harrowing, a gauntlet of enemy ships and defenses. Griffin and his team fought their way through, their skills and courage tested to the limit. They emerged battered but unbroken, their ship scorched and dented, but still flying. As they entered the Klingon homeworld's atmosphere, alarms blared, warning of incoming missiles. Griffin wrenched the controls, sending the ship into a dizzying spiral to evade the deadly warheads. The hull groaned under the strain, the ship shaking violently as it plummeted towards the surface. With a bone-jarring impact, they crashed into the rugged alien landscape. The ship skidded to a halt, smoke pouring from its damaged engines. Griffin kicked open the hatch, leaping out into the harsh, red-tinged sunlight, his team close behind. They fought their way towards the planet's core, a running battle against waves of Klingon warriors. Blaster bolts filled the air, the ground shaking with the thunder of explosions. Griffin led the charge, his weapon blazing, cutting down enemies with every step. Finally they reached their destination, a vast pulsing chamber at the heart of the planet. Griffin and his team set the charges, preparing to detonate the bomb that would shatter this world and cripple the Klingon Empire. Just as Griffin was about to arm the device, a shadow fell over him. He spun, coming face to face with Mira, the Klingon torturer, battered and bloody, but very much alive. Mira's eyes blazed with hatred, his remaining hand clutching a wicked-looking blade. "How you think you've won, human?" Mira snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "You think destroying this world will save your pathetic species?" Griffin raised his weapon, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It will end your empire's reign of terror once and for all." Mira laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You fool, we are not your true enemy. The Klingons were once a peaceful race before we found it." "Found what?" Griffin demanded, his aim never wavering. Mira's gaze grew distant, haunted. "An ancient artifact buried deep within our world. It whispered to us, promised us power and glory, but it twisted us, corrupted us, turned us into the conquerors we are today." Griffin hesitated, doubt flickering through his mind. Could Mira be telling the truth? Could the Klingons be victims just as much as humanity? Mira saw his hesitation and lunged, his blade flashing. Griffin reacted instantly, his weapon roaring. The blast caught Mira in the chest, burning through his armor, sending him staggering back. But the Klingon refused to fall. With a roar of primal rage, he charged at Griffin, slamming into him with bone-crushing force. They grappled on the edge of the abyss, trading blows, each seeking to hurl the other into the planet's molten heart. Griffin felt Mira's blade slice into his side, a searing bolt of agony. But he fought through the pain, his own fists hammering into the Klingon's face, his knees driving into Mira's gut. With a final titanic effort, Griffin heaved Mira off him, sending the Klingon tumbling over the edge. Mira scrabbled for purchase, his claws leaving deep gouges in the metallic surface. For a moment he hung there, his eyes meeting Griffin's. "Destroy the artifact!" Mira gasped, his voice ragged. "Free my people from its curse!" Then his grip slipped, and he vanished into the fiery depths below. Griffin staggered to the bomb, his blood dripping onto the controls. He stared at the detonator, the weight of Mira's final words heavy on his soul. If he destroyed this world, he would be killing millions of innocents, sentencing an entire civilization to death. But if he didn't, the war would continue. More human worlds would burn, more lives would be lost, and the insidious influence of the alien artifact would continue to poison the galaxy. In the end, there was no choice at all. Griffin armed the bomb, setting the timer. He gathered his team, those who had survived, and they raced back to their ship, fighting every step of the way. They blasted off, the sky above them filled with the flashes of Klingon ships, trying desperately to stop them. As they broke free of the planet's gravity, Griffin looked back at the world he had doomed. He saw the flash of the detonation, brighter than 1,000 suns, saw the planet crack and shatter, consumed by the unimaginable energies unleashed within its core. The shockwave caught their ship, alarms shrieking, hull plates buckling. Griffin held onto the controls with all his strength, fighting to keep them steady as the blast washed over them. And then it was over. The Klingon homeworld was gone, reduced to a spreading field of debris, the artifact that had corrupted them, destroyed along with the millions Griffin had consigned to death. A heavy silence settled over the ship. Griffin felt the weight of what he had done, the blood on his hands, but he also felt the grim satisfaction of knowing that he had dealt a crippling blow to the Klingon war machine. That humanity, at least for now, was safe. As they limped back to Earth, battered and broken but alive, Griffin's thoughts turned to Emily, to the promise he had made to her, to end this war and build a better future. It was a promise he intended to keep, no matter the cost. But as he looked out at the stars, at the countless worlds still waiting to be explored, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the true struggle for peace was still to come, and that he and all of humanity would have to fight harder than ever to make that dream a reality. Years passed, the wounds of the war slowly healing. Humanity rebuilt, stronger and more united than ever before. The shattered remnants of the Klingon Empire, free from the influence of the artifact, struggled to find a new path, to atone for the sins of their past. Emily grew into a strong, determined woman, her experiences shaping her into a leader of unparalleled vision and compassion. She worked tirelessly to build bridges between humanity and the other races of the galaxy, to find common ground and forge lasting peace. But the scars of the war ran deep, and old hatreds died hard. There were those on both sides who clung to the past, who saw conflict as the only way forward. And in the shadows, new threats emerged, ancient evils stirring in the depths of space. Through it all, Emily held fast to her convictions, to the belief that a better future was possible. And though the road ahead was long and fraught with peril, she knew that as long as there were those willing to stand up for what was right, to fight for the light against the darkness, there was still hope. For in the end, the true legacy of Captain Donald Griffin was not the worlds he had destroyed, or the enemies he had vanquished. It was the spark of courage and sacrifice he had ignited in the hearts of all those who followed after. a spark that would light the way forward through the challenges and trials to come towards a brighter tomorrow for all the galaxy. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.